Senator Rhiannon.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to ask some questions about contamination, mainly at Williamtown, but a few general ones as well.
I'm sorry, I missed the end of that.
Oh, sorry.
I heard you wanted to ask questions about contamination mainly, but I missed
Mainly
the rest.
about Williamtown, but a few general ones as well.
So I'll just ask Senator the appropriate officials to come to the table.
Thank you very much.
Senator Rhiannon, there are several senators that have questions on this topic. Can you give us an indication?
Depends how long the answers are. I don't think it'll be that long.
Thank you. For nothing.
No, that was 3
Hugely
fives.
illuminating.
Depends on answers. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. When will the community reference group, so there's 3 parts to this. When will the community reference group, the elected representatives reference group next meet? And the third one, when will there be another community drop-in session for the people of Williamtown?
The first two are run by New South Wales.
Steve Greshkowiak, Deputy Secretary, Estate and Infrastructure Group in Defence. The Community Reference Group is organised by the New South Wales Government. They're going through a process at the moment of restructuring the format of that group. And so it's a matter for them as to how that reformatting is concluded and when meetings will occur. It's also a matter for the New South Wales Government about who they ultimately decide to bring into that community reference group. From a Department of Defence perspective, I think we're planning on the next community information session sometime in the second half of November. I'm not sure if the dates are locked down yet.
And then the elected representatives reference group, is that yours or New South Wales?
Again, that's organised by the New South Wales Government, so I can't talk about when that might be.
What steps is the department taking to increase the capacity of the water treatment plants at the base to limit the further release of the potentially contaminated water?
So we've recently introduced a third water treatment plant, which is a containerised plant we brought in from an American organisation that's now commissioned and treating water that's exiting out of Moore's Drain. So we now have the water treatment plant associated with construction that's been operating there for a long time, a water treatment plant cleaning water out of Lake Cochrane, preventing discharge through Dawson's Drain, and a water treatment plant on Moore's Drain. So far, we've treated over 900 million litres of water down to levels that are, in most cases, below the limit of detection. And that water is then obviously put back into the environment. So we've ramped up our efforts in recent times. Those plants will continue to run for a considerable amount of time. We're still researching other methods for particularly cleaning soil. As well on the base, we are in the process of now starting to take away some of the surface soil from some of the drains on the base. So we're digging 200 millimetres of soil out of around 3 kilometres of drains. And the reason we're doing that is because that soil in the sort of the top of the drain has higher levels of PFAS contamination from over the years. So we're taking that out, which as fresh rain comes down, it means it runs through soil that is clean and therefore doesn't take any PFAS off the base. So those two strategies are in place at the moment. We're working through a process to start doing more remediation, particularly of what we refer to as a source area on the base. So, for example, the old firefighting training areas where I think our current plan is that we'd be seeking to excavate and store soil in a safe area until such time as we can find effective mechanisms for decontaminating soil.
So all the contaminated soil that you're digging up from the drains, that's been stored on base?
It's been stored on base in a way that means it can't leach into the environment.
Right, so the water can't leach through it?
Yeah.
Through it. So, because I understand that when, it's nearly 2 years since we had the inquiry and you knew about it before that at that stage, there was no decision to actually stop the source, that the water was continuing to run off the base. So my question is, when was the decision made if I understand correctly, to actually clean up dig up the contaminated soil and to clean up the water that's coming off the base. It seems as though there's a... So is it correct that there's been a change in policy with regard to the remediation of the soil and water, so you stop the source of this contamination?
I wouldn't characterise that as a change of policy. If we go back a couple of years, obviously when we first held those community reference groups, members of the community were saying, just, can you just stop this coming off the base? At that time, our response was, we're looking into mechanisms of doing that, but there's no sort of silver bullet, easy way of achieving that. So what we've done now, we were always going to try and stop the contamination leaving the base. We've stopped a significant amount of potential contamination coming off the base through the water treatment activities that we're doing. But as you may be aware, certainly from the information we've talked about in the community sessions, in part, at Williamtown in particular, part of the problem is the nature of the water table there. So there are other mechanisms, particularly by PFAS moving from soil into the underground water and then moving underground off the base. That is something that we have not been able to stop at this point. Digging up the source areas is one mechanism of starting to stop that pathway. But we've been quite open saying that it's going to be a fair while before we'd be able to hand on heart say that we've stopped PFAS leaving the base.
So is part of the problem that you had in dealing with this enormous problem the upgrade that's going on at the base at the moment, that one's made it difficult for you to actually undertake the thorough remediation that's required?
No, in fact, quite the opposite. The upgrade that's going on through the New Air Combat Capability Project, the first of the water treatment plants we put in place, which has been there for at least 18 months, is treating the water water that's associated with foundation work for those works. And so as you dig foundations, because the water table is so near the surface, the foundations naturally tend to fill with water. So we've been excavating that water or sucking that water out through a water treatment plant and re-injecting it into the ground as treated water. So we've been testing the soil that's been excavated, and the majority of it, we're not finding any PFAS. In some parts of that excavation, we found low levels of PFAS in that soil, and where that's been the case, the soil would have been either stored on base or disposed of through New South Wales EPA approved processes. So it's fair to say that the works that we've been doing, because of that water treatment plant that we've put in place, have effectively been contributing to the decontamination of the site.
I might have missed it when you said, but just to clarify, is the soil that you're dealing with and the water, that's all inside the base, or are you dealing with the contaminated soil outside the base as well?
So at this point, we're the drain maintenance work and the soil that's been removed from the Joint Strike Fighter works, and I should just clarify, any soil that we've had to store because of any contamination is stored on the base. At the moment, that's work on the base. We have a study ongoing looking at the broader drainage network around the area outside the base, so Moores Drain, Dawson Drain and the like, and we're working with Port Stephens Council on that, and there'll be hopefully some recommendations from that work that will give us an indication about options for further decontamination outside of the base. But the focus for the starting the decontamination has been on the base, because that's the source area, and generally the advice is you try and decontaminate the source areas first to prevent further contamination, and then move further out to see what decontamination can be done in the broader area surrounding the base.
Thank you. Can we move on to the issue of compensation? Has anybody been paid compensation yet? Any family, any person?
We do have a range of what are termed non-litigated compensation claims with the department.
But the question was, has any been paid? Not if they're in progress. First question, has anybody been paid?
To my knowledge, none of those claims have yet been settled.
And so they're in progress. Well, it's a matter of negotiation now about the price, is it?
They're being managed by our legal department through the normal process that they would use for that sort of claim management.
How many are you dealing with at the moment?
Yeah.
Senator Chris Birra, First Assistant Secretary Infrastructure. There's currently 25 non-litigated claims that have been received by Defence, 16 in relation to Williamtown, 8 in relation to Oakey and 1 in relation to Kathrine.
Thank you. And when do you expect that they will be when did they commence and when do you think they'll be resolved?
So the first of those claims probably would have been received of the order of 12 months ago. Some of them were received, or at least one of them was received quite recently. I can't give a forecast for when settlement may occur.
But that's actually probably one of the most important questions for you to be clear on, because like the stress this is putting people under, they just don't know what their future is. You know, I mean, you would be aware that some people have just now walked out of their homes, walked off their land. So surely you can give them some indication when this will be finalised. I mean, you've got a whole department.
Yeah, the claims are being dealt with by a legal team. I don't have personal visibility of most of those claims, and I have no information about likely settlement times for those claims.
Well, can you take it on notice so some information, some clarity can be provided on this important question so people have an understanding of what the future holds for them?
I'll take it on notice, Senator, but I'm not sure we can provide any further information than I'm giving. We generally wouldn't be able to talk about individual claims because of privacy reasons, of course. So we will take it on notice, but I'd be surprised if we can give an answer that would say these claims would be settled in this particular time frame.
Thank you. Can we just move on to the issue about the...
There are other senators with questions around.
Okay, I'll truncate these questions and I'll do this quickly. Thank you. Can we just move on to the issue, like you're now dealing with these problems in many areas. Is there a consistency between how you're working with the workers who have been impacted on the sites and the residents with regard to all the issues that you're dealing with, from compensation to health tests to remediation? Is there a consistency you're working on of standards? Like, let's start with health blood tests. Is everybody being offered blood tests like they have been in Williamtown?
So for those areas where the epidemiological study is in place, managed by the Department of Health, which includes blood tests, the eligibility criteria to be part of that process is the same for people, whether they be members of the ADF, members of the public. So, if, for example, for Williamtown and Oakey, it's for people who've lived or worked within the investigation area, be they ADF people or members of the public.
So is that the same at all other bases where you have this problem?
We generally try and provide the same information and the same response mechanisms.
So considering the shortage of time, you've just used the word generally, which is always sort of sets alarm bells off. So could you just list take it on notice, list the bases where the contamination has occurred, and are those, are the blood tests provided, the drop-in centres? So what you're offering in Williamtown, are those measures offered in other areas? For both workers and residents?
Yep. So in terms of community engagement, absolutely the same wherever we go. In terms of providing information to members of the community and members of Defence on the base, absolutely the same wherever we go. However, we do not do necessarily exactly the same things at each place we're investigating because the circumstances are different. We're running investigations now at 23.
So can you take
sites.
it on notice just what's different? Thanks very much. And just a final question, which I'm sure can be quick, is the Shellwater Bay. I understand there's 2 bases there and they don't appear to be on the government's current list of investigation sites. Is that the case, and if so, why?
So Shellwater Bay is a defence training area which has a range of facilities on there. Nobody's really based there full time. It's used for training. We currently are not planning an investigation there because our analysis of the range of defence sites hasn't shown that that's an area where we think there'd be a significant risk of contamination.